Ezekiel was thinking about a crisis. He was thinking about something really bad in the life of the ancient Israelites. In 587, before the time of Christ, the Babylonians set a siege on ancient Jerusalem. And this resulted in the city's destruction. It also marked the end of the kingdom of Judah, and it began what they collectively remember as the Babylonian Captivity. The same crisis was the centerpiece of the book of Isaiah and Jeremiah as well. Jerusalem was in what Walter Brueggemann called a season of deep displacement and disarray in the exile. All three books, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, shared this focus on crisis. And all three saw the crisis as a defining reality of knowing God. And all three saw God's judgment and fidelity through the crisis. This was the lens through which they could see what was happening in the world. And that's what makes future hope possible. Seeing God in those dark moments, seeing God when all seems lost, seeing God in the midst of a Babylonian captivity, helping others see hope in those moments can also help them see God. In recent headlines, that word, crisis, seems to be everywhere. I did a search just to see how often it came up, and it was sort of like the screen. If we had it next to me, it would just be scrolling upward. There was a story in The Guardian, Middle East crisis, and there was a whole subsection of stories under that. CNBC had weathering the global energy crisis. The Financial Times included a story with the title, Airline Industry hit by biggest crisis since pandemic. This list goes on and on and on. They're everywhere. There are political crises, environmental ones. There was even one about an environmental crisis in Iran because of the bombing. It just was so much. There are economic crises, public health crises, personal crises, and now it gets real because suddenly it's not somebody somewhere else, someone far away who's struggling and suffering. It's those things that we encounter. They're everywhere. Whether it's health or illness or worrying about parenting our children or taking care of parents, so many things stack up and surround us. Instead of asking if anybody's ever encountered a crisis, we should be asking, are you in one right now? And I'm there for you. Can I help? And you are not alone. And I hope things get better. Ezekiel 37 and that valley of dry bones bring hope into a situation that would appear utterly hopeless. Illness, surgery, divorce, fractured friendships, other fractured relationships, parenting, taking care of parents. This list seems endless. And when things aren't going well, when things go badly, when the doctor brings back news that was unexpected, when somebody does something or behaves in a way that we didn't anticipate, it can just drop the bottom out of whatever we were anticipating. Whatever we were expecting for that day suddenly takes a radical turn and everything seems different. A negative outcome can appear to have as certain a future as looking out at a valley of dry bones and realizing, yeah, the story's over. We can go ahead and call it. And we can struggle to keep hope alive when that situation arises and all seems lost. Robert Browning wrote a poem called Prospice, and it's a fantastic testimony of hope in the face of hopelessness. And I'm not going to recite the whole thing. I love the poem, Fear Death, the Fog. I'm sorry, I won't recite it. But there's a line that is in the poem that I think speaks to this in such a way to bring hope into situations of apparent hopelessness. Fear death. No, that's the beginning. For sudden the worst turns the best to the brave. For sudden the worst turns the best to the brave. The poem is a dramatic monologue in which the speaker confronts death with courage and optimism. Browning wrote it after his wife had died. And he says that we shouldn't be afraid of death. See, we all face these crises in our lives. And it's how we do that. It's how we face them and what hope we bring that defines our faith. God is capable. God is powerful, and God can do anything, including taking a valley of dry bones and joining bone to bone, bringing the sinew and the muscles and the skin, and then even proclaiming breath to come from the wind and bring this valley of dry bones back to life. We lack the ability to describe God's possibilities, even or especially in the face of things going badly. When we try to put it into words, we always fall short. We resort to stories, analogies, metaphors. For example, we even can really only ever see it in hindsight. We'll say things like, I didn't know it then, but now I can see that God was with me. God was working. God was there doing something in the midst of a period when I didn't see any hope. That's why theologians like Karl Barth refer to God as wholly other, W-H-O-L-L-Y, wholly, completely other, because we lack the ability to put into words who God is. Paul Tillich describes God as the ground of being, because God is the basis of all that is. But both definitions don't have the precision that we would often like. Both definitions sort of suggest there is this great mystery of knowing God and seeing God at work in the world. And through the prophetic books like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, we find reminders that no matter what we face, no matter what you brought with you this morning, God is capable. Ezekiel was a part of that great brain drain King Nebuchadnezzar used to subdue Judah. Nebuchadnezzar exiled Ezekiel along with a lot of the other best and brightest people of Judah, and he took them there around 597. And when Ezekiel started prophesying, he criticized what biblical scholar Catherine Darr calls the orthodox Yahwistic theology of his day. That means that the ancient Israelites thought that they had it all. They thought they belonged. They thought God's not going to let us fail. They had absolute confidence that God had commitment to David's dynasty, and there was no chance that God would ever let Jerusalem fall. They were God's favorites. And this is like thinking that because we're Christ followers, nothing bad is ever going to happen. And so now the participation portion begins. Everyone who's never had anything bad happen since proclaiming to follow Jesus, go ahead and raise your hand. No takers. Jesus said that there would be still trouble. He said that there would still be broken bones, hurt feelings. It's a little after our reading in the Gospel of John. It comes in John 16. We've all seen someone who felt entitled like the ancient Israelites. We've all seen someone who felt that their way was the right way. And to someone who feels that sense of entitlement, that ownership over their lives, the world, and other people perverts an understanding of what is, what exists. For them, everything has to go through their lens of what is right. And that's how the ancient Israelites were seeing things. The book of Isaiah begins with this very precise proclamation: in the 30th year, in the 4th month, and on the 5th day of the month, as I was among the exiles by the Hadar, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. And so Ezekiel's adventure begins. In the first 24 chapters, he spent most of his time condemning the ancient Israelites, past and present. Then in chapters 25 to 32, he talked about God's judgment on other nations. Ezekiel was a barrel of laughs. He had lots of good news for lots of people. But he didn't stop in chapter 32. He kept going. And in 33 to 48, he started looking at the future. What can be? What might be? And our reading in Ezekiel 37 comes from that. Look at the future. In days like these, we can ask how God can overcome impossible odds. This is where your crisis enters our Old Testament reading. This is where whatever you brought, whatever came to mind when I brought up the idea of crisis, comes into Ezekiel 37. For someone who is suffering or struggling or trying to find a way forward, restoration might seem impossible. For the ancient Israelites, living in Babylonian captivity, a bright future seemed absolutely impossible. And for many people, it's easy to identify with that. When we look at the tableau of crises headlines, when we look at all of the bad news in the world, or when we bring to the fore the things that we carry with us, we can easily identify with them. It's not over yet. Don't say it's over when the story's still going. Don't put a period where God has only placed a comma. Ezekiel 37 says, the hand of the Lord is upon me. And he had this trance-like experience where he could see what God wanted him to see. And unlike the fleeting memory of a dream that vanishes with the breaking of the dawn, when he came out of his trance, he could clearly see where God was leading not only him, but his people, and in turn, us. Don't rest in the crisis. Don't stop. Don't fall apart. Don't give in to it. God is still God. This passage is a call to life. Ezekiel went to the valley, and he wasn't alone. God was with him. God showed him what could be. And we can take that testimony of what can be and be the source of hope for one another. None of us walks through our crisis alone. None of us enters our valley of dry bones by ourselves. God is with us, and we are with one another. We can be the source of hope for one another. We can be reminders of what is possible. In this passage, there are fundamentally two lessons. The first one, anything is possible. And the second one is remind people of the first one. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Don't ever forget that. And don't stop reminding people of what can be. Amen.